Good evening and welcome to this evening's Eglinton Crosstown Extension West question and answer session, focusing on upcoming work in the Scarlett area. My name is Joseph Thornley. I'm the engagement partner for virtual consultation. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's question and answer session. And as such, I'll try to keep the event on time, make sure as many questions are answered as possible, and ensure your questions are answered as fully as possible. As you are looking at your screen, one important note, this event is being closed captioned. So if you want to see closed captions, just scroll down on your video and click on the CC icon that will be at the bottom of your screen. That will allow you to see the closed captions. Before we begin, let's take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Could you bring up the land acknowledgement slide, please? In particular, these lands are covered by 20 treaties, and we have a responsibility to recognize and value the rights of Indigenous nations and peoples, and conduct business in a manner that is built on the foundation of trust, respect, and collaboration. Metrolinx is committed to building meaningful relationships with Indigenous peoples and to working towards meaningful reconciliation with the original caretakers of the land. We want to talk for a second about safety, which is a tradition at Metrolinx. Safety is fundamental to everything that Metrolinx does. Next slide, please. As we know, construction for the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension project has begun, which means that trucks, machinery, and equipment will be operating in the Scarlett Avenue and Eglinton Avenue West area. Please stay alert in these construction zones. Obey all the construction signage in the area. Cross only at designated crosswalks. Let's all be safe. So I'd like to talk a bit about the format for this evening's meeting. Next slide, please. So we've scheduled this session to last an hour. It will start with a brief presentation and then we'll take as many questions as possible. Metrolinx will begin by providing an update on the upcoming work activities in the Scarlett area to prepare the site for the extraction shaft work and realignment of Eglinton Avenue West. The presentation, you'll be able to see it on the screen, but you can also click on the presentation materials link below the video and you can download it for your later reference. After the presentation, we'll turn to your questions. As you'll see, a number of people have already submitted written questions. You can scroll down and see those at the bottom of the screen. We'd ask that you take a minute to scroll through and upvote any questions that you might want to have answered in particular. We've also included a call-in option for tonight's meeting. So after we've dealt with the written questions, we'll go into the Zoom room and those people who want to ask their questions verbally will be able to do so. You can reach the Zoom room by scrolling down right below where you see the video panel and you'll see a yellow Join Zoom button. After the presentation, you may, if you want to ask your question, you may just want to, at that point, click on the Join Zoom button. You'll go over to the Zoom room and Kelly Thornton will be there. Kelly will recognize you when you put up your hand to ask a question and she'll turn on your mic so that you can ask the question. If you go into the Zoom room, we'd ask you to be brief in your question and to the point so that we can fit in as many questions as possible. And similarly, the panelists, just in preparing, they also talked with one another about wanting to be complete in their answers, but also on point in their answers. If you have other questions, you can add them to the written questions. Metrolinx has made a real effort over all of these meetings to go back and ensure that all of the major subject areas are answered in writing following the meeting. Again, If you've just joined us, you can have closed captioning for this meeting by simply scrolling down on the video and clicking on the CC on the closed captioning icon. So I'd now like to introduce our panel of experts for today. First off, we have David Panici, who is the project sponsor for the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension. He's joined by Nasser Qureshi, who's the project manager for the ECWE. Also with us is Fernando Triana, the project director for West End Connectors, Metrolinx constructor for the advanced tunneling contract. From community and public engagement, we have Stephanie Chow, who is the lead for the West End Connectors, and Hayat Mohammed is the traffic manager for the West End Connectors. So they'll all be here for the presentation and to answer your questions. Let's get ahead with the presentation, and I believe that David, you're going to lead us off.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Joseph, for the introduction. Super excited to be part of this virtual engagement, our November edition. We've been engaging virtually all year, and unfortunately, it's not in person. But we've really appreciated the opportunities to speak to community members and residents about the project. So I'll lead the first part of the presentation, and this is a collaborative session with our West End Connectors partners this evening. So excited to talk about tunneling and the construction updates that's really happening. It's really happening in the community. So that's awesome. So to start off, we've got a map of the project here. Tonight we'll be focusing on the area highlighted in blue. So the Renforth to Scarlett tunnel that's just starting construction out at the launch shaft at Renforth in the city of Mississauga. We can go to the next slide, please. A bit of the facts about the projects and benefits that we've outlined as part of the project for folks that haven't been part of these virtual engagements before, or that are just looking for some additional information. So the project is a 9.2 kilometer extension of the Eglinton Crosstown LRT project, currently under construction. The extension travels from Mount Ennis Station all the way out west into the city of Mississauga and terminates at Renforth, with a future connection being planned to the airport at Toronto Pearson. The project has 7 stations in total, and some of the exciting facts that we see as benefits to the community. We'll see over 37,000 boardings on the project on a weekday, which is shows great use in ridership and demand throughout the Eglinton West corridor. And some of there's lots of benefit to traveling faster between parts of Toronto and west into Etobicoke and into Mississauga. So 14 minutes travel time faster. So these are some of the great benefits that we see as part of the project, and we plan to deliver those benefits for the community as we're constructing. Can go to the next slide, please. I have 2 really exciting updates that we have to bring. The first one here is an update on planting efforts. Metrolinx, in collaboration with the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, TRCA, just 2 weeks ago, we recently started planting in the Eglinton West corridor at Scarlett Mills Park. We planted actually 400 trees on a beautiful autumn day. The weather was excellent, and we really took advantage of our first planting efforts for Metrolinx on behalf of the Subways program. So that's really a celebration moment. And this is really meaningful for the Eglinton West community and our project, because we're really taking a proactive approach to tree planting. Planting today in this start at this early stage in the project ensures that we'll have some trees that would have been growing for over 10 years by the time the project actually opens. So this is a really proactive effort and collaborative effort through our City of Toronto and TRCA colleagues. This is really to mitigate some of the impacts from construction of the Eglinton Crosstown West extension. So we're currently studying through our arborist reports and tree inventories, taking getting a good understanding of how many trees are in the corridor, how many trees will be impacted by the project, the health and life expectancy of the trees, and we're really proactively planning for compensation of the trees and planning to plant trees before we actually remove them as it's required of the project. So this is was really a great event that we can celebrate in the community. And in spring 2022, we'll restart planting efforts again, and hopefully look to other locations through our project partners. You know, locations such as Eglinton Flats is a good prime candidate for some tree planting efforts that you can expect next year. We'll head to the next slide. Secondly is a bit of an exciting competition for the community and residents to take part in. Through our West End Connectors folks, we are progressing on the manufacturing of the tunnel boring machines. So for Eglinton West, we'll need 2 tunnel boring machines to dig the tunnels across the alignment. And as part of a tradition in construction, tunneling, and transit worlds, we'd like to name the machines, and we're really looking for input from the community. This is a great opportunity. This is it's a tradition that's done across the world, and tradition that we're carrying on from projects like the ECLRT project and other tunnel boring projects that the TTC has undertaken. So your opportunity to provide feedback on submissions, we need 2 names, so a pair of names. Submissions and through our Metrolinx Engage website are due by November 18th. So you have just over 2 weeks. And that's phase 1 of the competition. And then the second phase of the competition will judge the naming submissions that we've received, and we'll actually announce winners and have a potential photo opportunity for the winners to visit the site and see the TBMs before they actually launch into the ground in 2022. So encourage all members from the community to take part through the Metrolinx Engage website, and look forward to some creative names on the tunnel boring machine. Next slide. Here we've got a project timeline for the overall Eglinton Crosstown West extension. So the project is planning to be constructed in multiple different areas. So we've got the Renfort to Scarlett Tunnel, which is really the focus of the discussion tonight. And Fernando and team will really dive into a bit more details on some of these construction activities and timelines. So construction of that tunnel is looking to start. The long shaft construction started this year, and the tunneling will start in 2022, and completion is in and around 2025. And then below there, we've got other parts of the project that we're looking to deliver in an approximately the 2025 timeframe, all the way out to 2031, where 2031 we plan to actually have an operating railway where passengers can enjoy the west extension all the way out to Mississauga and beyond once the airport. So with that, I really encourage folks to take the opportunity to speak, to ask meaningful questions to our West End Connectors partners this evening. We have our great experts on the call that will field the questions. And with that, I'll hand it over to Fernando to start talking about in more detail the advanced tunnel construction from Renfort to Scarlett. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, and good evening to everyone. This slide is speaking about the timeline for this advanced tunnel contract. That we have is our scope of work of Western Connectors, and basically consists in the construction of the tunnel, the different facilities necessary to support the construction of that tunnel. The first of the activities that we are doing is the construction of the launch shaft. That is the shaft that permits us the assembly and the launching of the TBM. That this is well advanced. I will see in next slide. And after that, starting in early next year, we expected to start with the assembly of the TBM. No? The TBM is already manufactured, and at this point is being shipped and is expected to arrive here in Toronto early next year, basically between late this year and early next year. At some point in spring, is expected to launch the TBMs and start the tunneling. That is expected to will be necessary to be constructed in around 20 months. So we expect it to finalize the tunnel around end of 2023 or early 2024. In parallel to the construction of the tunnel, that is the main activity and that we have in our scope of work, we have to construct the head walls of the stations. Okay, so basically it's the front wall, so the wall that the TBM has to go through, that is part of this scope of work for technical reasons, and we had to construct for Martin Grove, Kipling, Islington, and Royal Rock stations. And as you can see there, we will start in April 2022, and we finalize the last of them in autumn of 2023. That is important that you can see in this slide that is not a continuous construction. So we are going to be impacting some of the areas for a limited period, not through the whole duration of the project. The last of our scope of work, the last site that is part of our contract is the construction of the extraction shaft portal. There is that construction serves two purposes. One is to permit the extraction of the two TBMs that we are going to use for the construction of the tunnel. And second will be part of the portal that is basically the structure that permits going from underground to above ground. So basically the trains will go through that structure from surface to the tunnel. This extraction shaft portal is basically divided in three main activities. First one is to construct an alternative pedestrian ramp to permit the access to the pedestrian bridge, because it's part of the scope of work is maintaining the access to the pedestrian bridge during the whole duration of our contract. Once that is done, we can basically dismantle the existing pedestrian ramp, and we can start with the realignment of the Eglinton Avenue. And the purpose of this is in early stages of this project, and even early stages of the whole program of the Eglinton West extension, is to do the realignment of the Eglinton Avenue to reduce the impacts to the traffic. So basically, instead of doing temporary detours, continuous temporary detours, the idea is to do the realignment at the early stages, so the very beginning of the works in the area, so that will minimize the impacts to the traffic in the Eglinton Avenue. Once the Eglinton Avenue is realigned to the definitive configuration, we will start with the construction of the extraction shaft and the portal. Okay, that will happen at the end of 2022. Next slide, please. The tunnel boring machines that, as I mentioned before, are already being manufactured and tested in the factory in Germany. That this is in the very best manufacturer in the world for this kind of machines. And this been shipped in pieces. As you can see in the images, are big machines, really big machines, are 80 meters long machines, so has to be shipped in pieces and will begin to arrive in Canada at the end of November, and arriving to Toronto, to our site in Mississauga, rather than in Toronto, at the probably early December. The TBM is expected to be assembled starting in early 2022, probably around March, early April of 2022 in our Renford launch site. Okay. And the tunneling, as I mentioned before, is expected to start in spring 2022. And we are moving from Renford in Mississauga to the Scarlett. Okay. Concentrated all the activities that is supporting the tunnel operation from the launch shaft that is located in Renford Drive in Mississauga. The tunnels are 2 tunnels of 6.4 kilometers long, and I mentioned before, is expected to be completed at the end of 2023 or early 2024. Next slide. Here we presenting for the community an update of what is the advance of the works. This is our launch shaft here in Renford. At this point, as you see in the picture, we have already done all the piles around the shaft that permit the support of the excavation, that permits an stable excavation. Basically, we expect to reach the bottom of the shaft at the end of the year. Okay. The TBMs that will be launching from this site will dig down and operate with a maximum depth of 20 meters. The tunnel is expected to be concluded in around 20 months, to build this 6 kilometers. And you do the maths, I think this is a impressive production. I think that the TBMs are not only excavating the tunnel and installing the lining, so basically are almost finishing the tunnel at the same time that they're advancing. It's expected to have an average of 100 cubic meters of soil, of earth, that will remove every day for a total of 400,000 cubic meters of soil and rock that will be extracted through the tunnel with a conveyor belt system. Next slide. The TBM extraction shaft portal. This is the point where the TBMs will be dismantled, but not only will be used to dismantle the TBMs, so will be used as well for the portal. No? That is the structure that permits the transition from surface to tunnel. You can see in the right side of the presentation, you can see a picture of a very similar portal in Crosstown LRT. Is side of the city of Toronto with a very similar configuration, so you give an idea about how that structure works. So basically, we're using for these 2 purposes. Construction of the extraction shaft itself, that is, the initial configuration is very similar to the launch shaft. Basically, it's a rectangular compound that is done with piles. That part of the construction will start in fall of 2022. Once the alternative pedestrian ramp has been constructed, the Eglinton Avenue has been realigned. Okay. The TBMs will be extracted through that extraction shaft. We're expecting to start the removal of that at the end of 2023, as mentioned before, and 2024 is something that usually takes around a couple of months. And after that, we will continue with the construction of the portal and finalize the construction of the portal. So, next slide. In the next slide, we will give you some details of the first stage that we are going to do in construction. So the first stage in the area of the extraction shaft that is preparing now, constructing the new ramp that will permit and will guarantee the access to the pedestrian bridge in all times during the construction period. I'm going to hand over for that and to give additional explanation to Hayat Muhammad, that is our traffic manager for Western Connectors.
Thank you very much, Fernando, and good evening to all. So as Fernando mentioned, that this is the first step. We have to maintain this pedestrian bridge across all the time throughout the construction phase. And because the ramp is located currently on the right side, on the east side of this pedestrian bridge, so in order to make it more safer, we will move this ramp on the western side of the bridge, and we will maintain it. So during that process, we will occupy this eastbound curb lane for a shorter duration. And this is a minor impact during this process. And this work will happen this month, and you'll see some activities around that area, very minor impact during this month. Next slide, please. So here, this is the overall picture of the Eglinton, and the train will come out from the portal and it'll go up at elevated section. So in this phase, we will realign the Eglinton to make more room to accommodate that portal, and the south side sidewalk will also be shifted slightly south, about approximately 10 meters altogether, and accordingly the cycle track will also be moved. This construction will begin around early 2022, and you can see that there are 3 buildings there, 26, 25, 39, and 61 Ridgeways, and there is an access to the building from the Eglinton. We will maintain that driveway all the time during the construction phase, but after the LRT is in place, we have to close that driveway. We are in the process of developing the modeling, the model for this entire road network in consultation with our consultants, and we are closely working with the City of Toronto, paramedics, and TDC and the fire department to come up with the optimized solution to reduce the traffic impact. So next slide, please. So I think I should hand over to back to what's the next step?
Stephanie.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hyatt. Just talking briefly about construction monitoring. So for this project is going to be continually monitored to protect the community as well as the work sites that we are working in. These monitors include noise, vibration, and air quality, and it really depends on the type of construction that's happening and where that placement in proximity is. So for the Eglinton and Scarlett area, the noise, vibration, and air quality monitors have already been installed on some of the private residences and commercial buildings in the area. You may have seen them, and you can see pictures here of what they look like. We're also going to be installing additional equipment along the corridor between Renforth and Scarlett to monitor the tunneling work once the TBMs are moving. We can go to the next slide. So coming up, beginning in January next year, we want to provide more information for everybody about the work that's coming up. So we'll be providing a detailed construction schedule as well as a traffic management plan for the realignment that Hyatt just went over. And we're also wanting to share the more detailed construction schedule and management plans for the underground station headwalls that Fernando had brought up earlier as well. That's at Martin Grove, Kipling, Islington, and Royal York. So more information to come. Please keep in contact with us to find out when that meeting will be in the early new year. Next slide, please. So yeah, there's different ways for you to contact us should you have any questions about the project or you'd like to speak to the project team. The easiest way is through the email. You can also call us on our toll-free number or visit the website for more information. And you can also sign up for our e-newsletter at metrolinx.com/Eglinton West to find out more about project updates, what's coming to your neighborhood, or any upcoming virtual events that our project team will be part of. And that's it.
Well, thank you for that, team. Thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of information there. And again, you'll be able to see this video tomorrow, the replay, but you can also download it if the participants, want to have a copy that you can refer to. So let's go into the questions. As you recall, at the top, we indicated that we'll do some written questions first. We've selected the most voted for questions, and then we will go into the Zoom room. So if you want to ask a question in the Zoom room, now would be the time for you to click on the Join Zoom button under the video to allow you to get over there, and Kelly Thornton will be there as your moderator. But let me start off with some of the questions that have been submitted in writing. So, and I'm going to address these to you, David, because we bundled up 4 of the questions. This is clearly an important and a big project going right into the community. People in the community are concerned. People in the community are clearly engaged. And let's be honest, there has been some skepticism about Metrolinx's responsiveness and about the disclosure of information, the kinds of answers that you're getting. So I'm going to ask some of the questions that you'll see are written, and they're tough questions, but I would appreciate it if you could answer them all. So first off, there's the question of the long-term negative effects. And the questioner who had wrote in said that the long-term financial, environmental, and mental health costs of an elevated cement rail line and station through Mount Dennis's parkland far outweighs any short-sighted, short-term cost savings. The Gardiner Expressway and Scarborough RT are mistakes not to be repeated in our community. It's not a question, but a final statement: keep the Eglinton Crosstown West extension tunneled, out of sight and out of sound. So that's the first one. I'll go on for a couple more, and then David, I'll ask you to address them all because there's some overlap. Real community consultation is the next one that has been written in. And the questioner says, despite proper lack of community consultation, Metrolinx is rushing through to establish an above-ground LRT in Mount Dennis by commencing with construction at Eglinton and Scarlett Road. Mount Dennis residents require further communication and consultation before this construction begins. The question, is Metrolinx willing to consult with the community? Third one, along the same line, meaningful dialogue. Metrolinx's superficial community engagement with our community regarding a proposed elevated rail line through our greenbelt space is unsatisfactory. Mount Dennis residents deserve a meaningful dialogue on this important matter of destroying our limited tree canopy. When can we expect meaningful dialogue before we lose our precious parks? And then fourthly, and related, residents need to see accurate images showing the scale of the impact of the LRT portal, elevated guideway, and overpass stations will have on our parks and our community. Also, the scope of realigning Eglinton west of Scarlett Road. Illustrations to date showing colored lines and boxes seem misleading. When will Metrolinx provide detailed graphics that are to scale? So, David, that's a bunch of stuff there. A call to keep it tunneled. I know that's not the first time you've heard it. A question about the consultation and how meaningful it really is. And then a question about the nature of the information and whether or not it's really realistic enough for people to make an accurate judgment and provide feedback.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. I appreciate the questions from the questioners that have posted online, and absolutely, we'll start talking about the elevated guideway off the bat to try to focus the discussion on some of the hot topics that we're hearing. We've heard a lot of feedback on the elevated guideway over the past few months. From the community and some of the community associations, and we've heard a lot of feedback from, as you've highlighted, Joseph, members of the community that wish the project to be tunneled in this section of the alignment. You know, we continue to do, and we've done a lot of studies and reports on the alignment from Mount Dennis all the way over to Scarlett, which is partially tunneled and approximately a 1.5 kilometer elevated guideway. There are technical challenges that we've highlighted to the community, and we continue to express our concerns about the major tunnel infrastructure and underground stations within the Humber River floodplain. And now, while these technical challenges aren't impossible to overcome, and they absolutely are feasible, we've studied through our initial business case, and we've reported that we believe that the elevated section through this part of the corridor and the balance between elevated and tunneled across the entire project is really the best solution from a transit perspective. And you know, from a technical perspective, we anticipate that tunneling under the Humber River and the waterway is challenging and would require super deep tunneling, you know, in and around 10 stories below grade, and that access to some of those stations, if a tunnel was to be constructed, would be super challenging for passengers to access down multiple flights of escalators or stairs and long elevators. So these are some of the real technical and passenger experience and challenges that we've communicated to the community. The business case really, it's available on the website, and it outlines why the selection of the alignment and the balance between tunneled and elevated is being pursued on the project. So we'd like to continue the consultation that we've started to date in this forum, in virtual engagements, and also in smaller settings. You know, the contact us page is up there, and we'd love to continue to hear from residents and community members through multiple channels, and we'd like to progress the discussions on why we think the elevated guideway through this area is the most feasible option from a project and community perspective. Some of the concerns, you know, we've heard impacts to parks access, tree impacts, noise and visual impacts. We've heard all of this, and over the past couple of months, while we collect feedback, we're carefully designing and considering all the different facets that the community has raised to us, and we're really committed to working through the design process and updating the community in a timely manner as the project progresses. We're working with the project stakeholders, TRCA specifically, City of Toronto, TTC, on how we can make the best project and design and bring that forward to the community. And lastly, it's you know, balancing. There's the question about where is the elevated guideway going to be placed? What are the setback requirements? And some requests for detailed illustrations and drawings. So that all that information is under development at this current stage. The next immediate step, we're looking to develop a survey for the elevated guideway, and we're committing to providing, as part of that survey and questionnaire, images, dimensions, including setbacks of the guideway, to help community members understand where the alignment is proposed and what potential impacts we foresee. We've previously expressed, like, we want this guideway to be as close to the Eglinton roadway as possible. So, you know, there's careful considerations and safety considerations that we're reviewing with our City of Toronto colleagues to really make that come to fruition. So, you know, we're absolutely committed to continuing the engagement. We hear the concerns about meaningful engagement, and you know, we want to hear directly from you if you feel that that you are not being engaged in the right way. So we look forward to the next steps on the elevated guideway discussions and the design, and bringing those forward to the community. So it was, you know, my attempt to answer multiple questions at once, and we'll continue the discussions here in future sessions, and I'll pass it back to Joseph for the next hot questions on the agenda tonight. I think you've got mute, Joseph.
Joseph, you're mute.
Sorry, you'd know it'd be the moderator who would do that. I apologize. David, you gave us a lot of information, and thank you for that. I want to follow up on two things. The first thing is to you, David, and that's on the survey. And Stephanie, in a second, I'm going to come to you on the issue of dialogue. But David, on this, you said there's going to be a survey. Will all residents have an opportunity to participate in that survey and see that detailed info that you're providing? Or will it be something that's just sent out to statistically valid sample? Is it something that'll be widely available?
Absolutely, yeah. Totally available through the Metrolinx Engage website. It will be available to all residents and community members. And if there is any challenges with accessibility via the Metrolinx Engage website, you know, just reach out to us. We're willing to facilitate the conversation however possible, so that all community members are receiving the same level of information and detail, and your questions and concerns are answered.
Okay, thank you for that. And one of the questions specifically talked about dialogue. So consultation can be, we'll ask you some questions and you have the opportunity to say your piece. And you did say, David, that you're listening. And maybe Stephanie, this is for you, because I saw that you had a slide about the ongoing consultation. Dialogue usually involves some response. So is there something that you can say to those people who may be concerned that they're not being listened to and they're not being responded to? Are you making an effort to actually, those people who contact you, to respond to them and to have something of a dialogue?
Yes, we are, especially for the, I mean, we're West End connectors, so we're more focused on the tunneling. And I believe these questions were about the elevated guideway. But as you can see on this contact slide, where people can reach out, they're going to reach members of the project team, myself, Metrolinx communications team, and we are here to answer questions and to engage with the community. And for the tunneling itself, we are going to be knocking on doors and coming out to the neighborhoods, making sure that we have that open dialogue between the project team and the residents in the area. So we're always here to listen and to consult with the community.
Okay, so knocking on doors. So once we get past this time, people will have a chance to dialogue. I'm sorry to take so much time on this, but I think it's important. A few written questions, but then we're going to go over to Kelly in the Zoom room. So if you want to ask a question, please do just click on the Zoom. Traffic control on Eglinton, the next question. Reducing it to one lane, I think I heard you say that it will just be partial for lane. The question is, reducing it to one lane will back up westbound traffic. And it will also, the traffic then probably look for alternative routes going through bordering neighborhoods. What will you be able to do to control it? And at the same time, with the realignment, how are cars going to get through when the road is ripped up? And will there be any diversion to side streets? So can you deal with that issue of the traffic leaking out into the other neighborhoods and how you can manage it during the time when fewer lanes are available and there is construction?
Can I take up that question, Joseph, because it's my area of expertise for the last 28 years. So I'll be happy to answer that question. That's a typical traffic question. It's a good question though. And reducing a lane will have an impact for sure. And you will end up with a lot of queues backed up. And the question is that how we will deal with that, whether the traffic will be diverted to the neighboring area or the area within the residential neighborhood. So according to our plan, we don't have any plan to divert any traffic anywhere. That's number one. Number two is that we have a space between the two intersections. Once we reduce it down to single lane, so we have to see that how long space is available to accommodate that traffic. So the good news is that nowadays a lot of tools are available to accurately determine the length of the queue through the tools. So we will do that exercise and we will find out the length of the queue and we'll see that what is the length of the queue, and if we are able to accommodate that, that's fine. And I'm hoping that this will not happen, that it'll impact the other intersection, because the gap between the two intersections is about 1 kilometer. But in case if it happens, then definitely this westbound traffic movement will be controlled at Royal York intersection, and this will be controlled through adjustment in the timing plan. And this entire thing will happen during only 1 hour. That is the peak hour, maybe 2 peak hours, but rest of the 24 hours, it should work fine. I mean, there shouldn't be any backed up queue or long queues during that 24-hour period. The other one is that realignment, how the cars will get through that when the road is ripped off. Unfortunately, we have to rip off the road to build that LRT system. That's true. And again, there is no plan. But in case if there is a congestion, people always choose to divert themselves to other streets. But this is our planning, that we will try to accommodate as much traffic as we can, and we need to optimize the signal timing plan so that the traffic should not be delayed. And we'll try to reduce the queues as well through the modeling exercise. So we'll see that how we can accommodate it, but for sure, I'm hoping that the impact of the traffic will be minimized.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's squeeze in one more written question before we go over to Kelly. This is one clearly from people who are living right there. Will those of us who back on Eglinton lose our backyard? How close to our backyards on Lemonwood are the tracks? How close will the bike path be? We're concerned about property impacts. So can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, I think I can respond to that question, Joseph. I think this is one thing is we want to leave absolutely clear today is that not any backyard is going to be affected by the construction. Okay? I think this is, if I'm not wrong, if I remember correctly, the drawings, I think it's around 3-4 meters. That is the closest that we are from the backyards of Lemonwood. No. That is the closest, and only during the period that we are realigning in the worst case scenario, during the worst moment of the project, not during the continuous operation or the continuous construction of the structure sub. So the closest that we're going to have is around these 3-4 meters, and during a very short period of time, because once we have constructed the retaining wall that we have to construct at the south of Eglinton Avenue to permit the realignment, we will be far from those backyards. So nobody has to be concerned about that we are going to affect the backyards.
Thank you for that. Now, I understand that Kelly has questioners who would like to ask their questions directly to the panel. So Kelly Thornton, are you able to take it over?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I am. So we have a few questioners here. The first question is going to go to, now I don't know the person's name, but it's the phone number that ends in 6443. You can unmute yourself now and ask your question. Okay, maybe we'll come back to that. The next person we have to ask a question is Hawa. So Hawa, if you unmute yourself now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I'll start first by saying my name is Hawa Mide. Thank you to the panel for answering some of the questions that were put forward before you today. I have a follow-up to the question around consultation. Joseph, thank you for belaboring the point. So my question is really, what happens between the door knocking? And more concretely, will Metrolinx move forward to build irrespective of the concerns raised by community members about the tunneling happening in Mount Dennis? And have you used an equity analysis to consider the impact, the social impact on residents living in Mount Dennis having their green space taken up pretty quickly during the end or potentially another wave of a global pandemic?
Okay, thanks. I think I'd like to start off. You were asking about whether we were just going to go ahead, and you mentioned with the tunneling through Mount Dennis. So I'm sorry. Yes, the plan is for the tunneling to Mount Dennis. That last 500 meters will be an underground tunnel just to the east of Jane, where the guideway goes, or the trains go back into the ground. Then the trains will realign under Eglinton and go into the tunnel and into Mount Dennis Station. So yes, that is the alignment. Is that what you were asking?
No, I was referring to the above ground work that's being done.
Okay, right. So I think we've answered that many times. We don't have much new to say about that. I think the short answer is yes, the guideway will be built. In terms of everything that we're doing in our design and consultation, and bringing all of that back to the City of Toronto to look at ways that we can bring it closer to Eglinton. And surely, just to be clear, the guideway itself is on the boulevard, is close to Eglinton. It does not run through the parks. The staging area that you're talking about in Piran Park, we've heard loud and clear from the community that they'd like us to take a closer look and see if there's a way to reduce the size of that. It is a very, very tight space, as you can imagine. There's not a lot of space there for a tunnel launch shaft. But we did hear the community loud and clear, and there was some very good suggestions that we heard that we do want to take back to the City of Toronto and see if any of those are feasible. I think the inevitability is that we will be in Piran Park, and whether we can reduce the size of the staging ground is the question that we want to work on. And certainly we appreciate that is a temporary loss for the community, that park space. And we'd really like to turn our attention to talking about how we can give back in that regard, what we can do to compensate for that. We're not keeping people out of the park entirely. There still will be quite a lot of space. Of course, the playground will always be available. That's nowhere near the site. The baseball diamond will always be available, and any of the outfield space there as well. So we're doing our best. It's very tight space. It's a tough balance. But we have heard you loud and clear, and if we can make it smaller, we absolutely will.
There was another additional piece on that around an equity analysis and whether or not that's been incorporated into any of these plans.
Well, what's been looked at is the analysis in the initial business case. I think an equity analysis is not something that's specifically been done. Our role at Metrolinx is to do an initial business case and provide that evidence to decision makers, and we've done that. And the evidence speaks to the viability and the best option being that mixed alignment. So we've gone through lots of the reasons why the mixed alignment performs better as a transit system. And as much as we want to work in the community and make sure that we leave it in a very good space and improve or create new amenities for the community, because we understand that this is a lot of construction in the area. We'll do it as quickly as we can. But this project is one in a very large network of projects that are being built now to connect the region. So as well as the city and local residents who are going to get on it, it's also been designed to provide those seamless connections to other rapid transit along the line. So there's lots that gets looked at. And, you know, we've said several times in our smaller table meetings, if people would like us to walk through the initial business case with them, we're happy to do that. And please, if you want to leave your name in the chat here or send me an email directly, we're happy to set that up and go through it with you and your neighbors if you like. Okay, how I appreciate it. Thank you. And please stay in touch. But we are going to move on to the next question. So Brian, you've sent me a message in the chat. Would you like to ask your question? If so, you can unmute yourself now. Brian, did you want to ask your question? Okay, I think we'll move along. So I have is Will on the line still? Will, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. My question was regarding the driveway that's intended to be closed after phase 1, accessing the properties on Richview Road. It was discussed that a more detailed traffic study was going to be done in order to assess what the impact of that permanent closure would be. What kind of timeline would we be looking at for the results of that kind of traffic study? To see proposals from Metrolinx and the West End connection to provide the community with proposals for how to mitigate it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So Will, one thing I just want to clarify, and it's in the deck, but just so we're all on the same page when we first, when we have this discussion. So the driveway is going to remain open throughout all of the work that the West End connectors are doing. When the driveway closes, that's when the elevated guideway needs to be built. So it's not what we're doing. It's not work that we're doing West End connectors. It's analysis that we're doing now with the City of Toronto in the traffic management study and looking at what can be done there. But we have David, who's actually leading those discussions with the city. So I'll let him add in some info.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the clarification. Hi, Will. Thank you for the question. We recognize the concern that we've raised, and we've tried to proactively to notify the community in advance of planning for the elevated guideway that there will be the permanent closure required for the driveway access to 29, 25, 39, and 61 Richview. By way of process, Metrolinx traffic experts and technical advisor continue to develop the traffic impact study, and through that development process, there's a significant amount of consultation that's done collaboratively with the City of Toronto Traffic and Transportation Department. So that analysis and reporting is currently underway, and I think in terms of timelines, I anticipate perhaps in the new year, in Q1 of next year, we could start to show results. Once they're endorsed by City of Toronto staff, we can roll out through future engagements in this platform or other platforms what the results of that traffic impact study are and what the mitigation measures specifically will be in terms of mitigating the loss of the driveway to that subject property. So, please be patient with us. The analysis is underway. Reporting will wrap up with the City of Toronto, and we will look forward to consulting the community in the new year. And mitigation measures will be addressed in order to deal with the driveway closure, and that could involve a slew of local road network improvements that that varies from traffic signal timing changes at the major intersections such as Scarlett and Eglinton, and upstream at Richview Road, or some more major interventions if the traffic impact study results define that's the case. So please, please stay in touch. We will be coming back in the new year, with some updated information as we roll out additional details on the elevated guideway.
Thanks, David. We're at 7:30, but can I just ask if we can just hang on and for one more question here? And Albert, if you'd like to ask, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
Hi there. So in the previous meeting, by the way, this question is directed at David. So in the previous meeting, Mr. Joshua Engelyan, he mentioned something about having a face-to-face meeting with the community around the Humber River or Purin Park site, because it seems like the Mount Dennis community has a lot of, I guess, strong opinions about the LRT project. So it would be best to have an in-person meeting, because also our community has a lot of people who aren't as technologically, I guess, well-versed as the people who are here today. So I know a lot of people haven't been able to attend today's meeting just because of that fact. So I'd just like to ask, when can we look forward to having an in-person meeting with, I guess, the groups of residents instead of individual residents, you know? And also one more thing, in the previous meeting, I asked a question and it's, for some reason, I wasn't able to ask a follow-up. I don't know if my mic was cut out or anything. So I would just like to ask if I could follow up on your answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sure, thanks, David. I'm just going to start that off by saying that we have started doing some in-person. We have been on site. We joined an event a few weeks ago down at the Humber. We are starting to set up in condo and apartment buildings nearby, because we know that not everyone, and like you said, not everyone is attending these sessions. I think what we'd like to do, we'll certainly continue those as weather permits and as our COVID numbers are staying quite low. I do want to mention though, what was I going to say? Sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. Oh, right. So sorry. So as David, so what we talked about during the presentation was that when we create this survey, it's going to provide a lot of the information that people have been asking for. Some of it that we've been answering, and some people don't like the answer, but we continue to repeat the answer. And some of the information will be able to put in your hands that we haven't been able to date. So what David had mentioned was better images, cross sections, setbacks, so that people can really understand what we're talking about when we say as close to Eglinton as possible and as little impact as possible on the slope. And I'd really, we are always happy to meet a small group of people in the park to have these conversations, if you think that's useful at this time. But if you could give us a few more weeks until we have that information, that I think will help with the conversation a lot. But you're absolutely right. This is not the only way that we're engaging. And we do send notices every month to thousands of people along the line. And we're very open to having phone calls, smaller table discussions. We encourage people not to just wait for these big meetings, because there's a lot of time that passes in between. So, and we're always here to have those smaller discussions. So Albert, if you have a specific idea in mind and a group of people you'd like us to meet with on site, please let me know, send me an email, and I'm happy to set that up.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay,
thanks, everyone.
thank you, Kelly, and thank you to the Zoom room. So that about brings us to the end of tonight's event, but I want to underline for people that this is just the end of tonight's event. This is not the end of the process. If you go and look at the website where you are right now and just bookmark it in your browser, as David said, and I think as Kelly underlined, there will be a survey that will be here so that you'll be able to participate. This is the 8th in the series of these live meetings going back to March. They've been happening monthly. There's been a lot of information, new information tonight. You can see other information from the previous meetings, plus the questions that have been asked. And there is a contact us button as well as the live meeting button on this page, where if you want to send an email directly to the project team, the form is right there. You can fill out the subject and send it right from here. So the team will be back again. Thank you, everybody, for participating tonight. I personally hope that you found it informative. And for those who asked questions, I hope that you got responses. The nice thing here is that the written questions will be open for a period of time after the meeting. So if you're looking at the presentation, if you didn't get your question answered tonight, you can add the question to the written questions here, and the Metrolinx staff will be looking at it. So again, thank you for tonight. It's part of a journey. Thank you to the team for presenting. Thank you, Kelly, for being in the Zoom room. And until the next time, please stay safe and healthy. Good night.